Welcome to the For Everything Cloud webinar brought to you by China Broadband Communications and Al-Khaira. My name is Sri Narayanan, former editor of CIO Asia and industry commentator, and your moderator for the panel discussion today. So what does it mean to say For Everything Cloud? If the events of 2020 are any indication, the debate over whether companies should or shouldn't migrate to the cloud is well and truly over. In the last 10 months, the cloud has truly been an enabler of business survival, business innovation, a catalyst for accelerated digital transformation, and an engine for growth for many organizations. But such widespread adoption and acceptance poses significant challenges. And that brings us to our first topic for the panel today. Can we have the question, the first slide, please? Okay. So a recent study, as alluded to by Andy earlier in the opening, found that most enterprises are only 20% of the way in their cloud journeys. What do you think is holding enterprises from moving the remaining 80% into the cloud? Now, just to give a little bit more context, the 20% represents the simplest, least complicated workloads within the organization that they could migrate to the cloud. So I thought to start off our discussion, I'd like to invite Leo, Chief Technology Officer of Dentsu International, to maybe comment from the perspective of enterprises why this might be so. Leo, what's your thoughts? I mean, 20% sounds to me as a very intriguing statistic. Given that the past decade we've talked a lot about cloud computing, and we've experimented. There's been a lot of education around it. It seems rather odd that only 20% seem to have, they've only migrated 20% of their workloads. What's your thoughts from a customer perspective?
Sure. Thanks, sir. Yeah, so based on my observation, of course, there are many factors, but there are three key factors, in my opinion. One is really cost, and the second one, skills, and the third one, compliance. So on the cost side, what I meant is that many enterprises have pressure to optimize IT costs, especially this year. While cloud provides good total cost advantage, however, the OpEx can sometimes be higher than the CapEx in the short term. And on the skill side, many enterprises do not really have the in-house expertise to modernize legacy applications and also complete a low-level design for cloud migration. Right. And on the third one, the compliance side, so cybersecurity laws, PII data protection, financial regulations can be really complicated and very dynamic as well for enterprise operating in multiple countries. So I think those are the three key reasons why it's kind of holding back the enterprise for adopting clouds in a more accelerated fashion.
Okay, and has that been your experience as well at Dentsu?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Let me just invite Richard over here to come in. What do you think of the statistic? 20% along their cloud journeys. That would mean 80% are still, are waiting to move it. Do you think it's a fair number, Richard?
Probably. I don't have the precise number, but I do see the trend is still towards everything cloud. Okay.
Yeah.
Just echo to what Leo just mentioned. Things were slowing down by a lot of different reasons, but without going to the cloud, I'm seeing a lot of traditional business are having problems with their operations. So I believe they will speed up and they will move to the cloud very soon.
Okay, and Amir, just to get a perspective, there has been some talk about this being a cultural thing as well. But I wonder, across the globe, from your experience, do you think this is true, that about most enterprises, about 20% along in their journey, or is it more representative of a certain group of customers? And incidentally, the study was done on 800 CIOs across Fortune 1000 companies.
Right.
Amir?
Thank you for the question, Sri. It depends upon the region also a little bit. Like US, maybe the companies maybe are slightly ahead from the cloud migration perspective, and then closely followed by Europe and Asia. And what we are seeing is that it was quite complicated for the companies to adopt the cloud environment. And for example, one of our customers, Koch Industries, talked about it publicly, that it took them over 18 months to 2 years to adopt a single cloud in their environment to migrate significant portion of their applications to the cloud. And majority of these customers have this planned out now. They want to be in the cloud. The applications are at different stages of migration. Some applications were done for the on-premise environments, and some were done from the beginning for the cloud environments. So we are starting to see an accelerated effort along all organizations.
Okay. And so I would be right to say, I mean, that a significant part of the problem is maybe a skills gap?
It's a skills gap, and also the environments are quite complicated, even though they seem to be easy, but different pieces like the networks in the cloud may not be at par with where customers want them to be seamlessly integrated with their existing infrastructure. So what we are noticing is that cloud compute, storage, applications, and databases are far ahead in adoption, and it's relatively easy to scale them, adopt them, and start using them in the cloud environments. But when it comes down to integrating everything with their hybrid infrastructure, which is on-premise and cloud seamlessly, that's where the issue seems to be bigger.
Right. Okay. That's a good segue for me to the next point we wanted to talk about. Could we just bring up the slide for the next point? One of the big challenges in migrating to the cloud, as I think Amir has also noted, is in integrating the network, your existing network, to the cloud infrastructure, using the internet as its transport, and being able to deliver optimal application performance. Because after all, if you can't get optimal performance from the application, then why move to the cloud? So the question is, how can we help businesses who are in this particular situation mitigate this concern about moving to the cloud, using the internet as the key transport, and still feel that it's a viable solution for them? Richard, what's your perspective on this? I mean, especially using the network and integrating it with the internet. What are the trends you're seeing? What are the developments in that respect, and what are the challenges enterprises are facing there?
Yes, I think this will be the combination of the technologies and the services to help the customer to get a very smooth network experience when they connect to the cloud via internet. So technology-wise, we're seeing a lot of SD-WAN vendors, especially like the box vendors. They're using all kinds of technologies to try to mitigate the problem and improve the internet quality, such as like TCP session optimization, like error correction algorithm. So with that, they will enhance and improve the quality of the broadband internet. And so we are part of this from CBC. Our in-house developed SD-WAN support all these kind of technologies. And more than that, we think so we are doing an extra mile to introduce new concepts to improve the quality of the internet link. So such as we try to there are all different scenarios. Okay, sometimes we want separate a big pipe into multiple different passes. So to like avoid a big failure on the main path. So, and sometimes we combine different streams to make the transport more efficiently. Okay, and so this is like technology-wise, and we also emphasize from the network services point of view, we want to create a comprehensive network fabrics to our customers. So always complement the internet with a massive layer 2 connections and even 4G, 5G as a backup to make sure the network is always reliable. Okay, we developed the technology to protect especially the key applications and the mission critical destinations. We make sure they are always on the best path. Okay, if it's not internet, then it will be layer 2. We just make sure always these mission critical applications will be on their best path to the destinations. So this also requires our team will understand the customer requirement and help them to design the network, and using the SD-WAN technology, using the intelligence from the network management, we make sure their applications are always on a reliable path.
Okay, all right, thank you. Leo, maybe you could weigh in from a enterprise customer's perspective here. Is Endensu using SD-WAN quite extensively?
Yes, we're using SD-WAN. I wouldn't say extensively, but in different pockets.
Leo? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so we are using SD-WAN. However, we are using it in different pockets, right? I wouldn't say everywhere yet.
Okay. Okay. And what's your experience been with the SLAs? Because Richard was quite right about saying that there is a need for backups and a comprehensive network fabric when you extend your network with the internet. Has that been your experience? A good experience with the SLAs that the vendors have provided for you with SD-WAN?
Yeah, so speaking of SLA, right, it's kind of interesting because 20 years ago when I worked for WebEx, kind of pioneering web conferencing, which we are using today, we innovated a technology called Mediatone, right? So the idea at the time is that this type of technology, right, should really be like a phone, right? So when you pick up the phone, you expect to hear the tone, right? So I think with the advent to agile working anywhere, anytime, any device, and also thanks to COVID accelerating the timeline, the bigger question for enterprise in the future is that what should be the new overall architecture, not just the network layer, right? To really enable agile working and advance to the future enterprise.
Right. Okay. I was thinking out loud that as Richard also mentioned earlier, there are a lot of vendors in the SD-WAN space, and of late we've noticed a lot of companies attempting to integrate SD-WAN on their own. It's a DIY approach, and naturally, it's posed a lot of problems for different organizations. I mean, what are your thoughts about this? If I was an enterprise looking to integrate the internet into my network architecture as part of my cloud journey, is the DIY approach the way to go? Is it viable at all, or is it far too complex a process?
Right.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it's not just SD-WAN, right? From what I've seen, even though cloud did bring quite a lot of advantage, right, and advancement, but it also created quite a lot of problems and issues. Now everything as a service, but then there are too many services, right, from too many different vendors, and everyone kind of specialized in one area and assume the enterprise will be able just to kind of put them together as Lego pieces. But in reality, those Lego pieces not really fit very well, right? Because they're made by different vendors, right? So I think moving forward, actually, I see, when we talk about service as everything, that it should be more of a turnkey service rather than, enterprise have to get different pieces from 10, 20 different vendors and trying to figure out what's the most optimal way to kind of put them.
Right. Amir, do you have a perspective on that?
Certainly. When we invented SD-WAN at Viptela, we brought together the MPLS, and an alternate transport was the internet. In some cases, when you needed high SLA type applications, you would use MPLS for that, and you would use high bandwidth type applications with lower SLA, which could tolerate lower SLA. You would use internet in that mix. And we put a fabric together to bring those environments in the mix. And internet was lower cost, MPLS was higher cost, so it's served the customers very well. And now you're starting to see, as Richard was also alluding to it, that people are starting to improve the performance of the internet as well. But now as we move forward, as you know, the cloud providers are spending a lot of money on their infrastructure. So applications that reside in the cloud, rather than taking them all the way to where they reside in the cloud over the internet, it's much better to utilize the cloud provider backbone. So for that, what we have done is we have created these virtualized constructs called cloud exchange points, which benefit the customer to come into the clouds as quickly as possible, as closely as possible in their region. And as an example, one of our customers has employees in India who were consuming cloud-based instances of compute and storage in the US East Coast. And they were having performance issues over the global infrastructure over MPLS and internet. MPLS was lower performance, but extremely good SLA and good delay characteristics. Internet, on the other hand, was high performance, but high loss and higher jitter. And so when we brought up a backbone on demand for them, for the cloud applications, they benefited significantly on the performance side, and the SLAs were closer to that of MPLS. So we have to utilize the best capabilities of each one of these environments. And the future is as a service. And to date, what we have been doing is stitching things together manually. And what we are trying to do is take it to the next level of automation, where the customer should not have to think about the nitty-gritty details of the underlying infrastructure. They should be able to come in and utilize all the networking capabilities as a service, so that you can adopt multiple environments in a standardized manner, rather than learning about each complexities of each environment.
Right. Okay, that's quite illuminating, and it also raises another point, which leads on to our next question for discussion. Could we have the next question on the screen, please? So, Amir was talking about this just moments ago. Network as a service, or NAS, as we're calling it now, has emerged as a new option. But for enterprises moving to the cloud. But many enterprises are not convinced, and I've seen this myself, that the as a service model will work, will meet their network requirements, right? We've talked a few moments ago about how some workloads are just too complicated, and the skills gap is an issue as well. But just to clarify, since it's a very new thing in the market, could we define what a NAS is and what it's not in particular, and how this actually helps companies? And if we can, maybe let's talk also a little bit about the as a service model? Because my understanding is NAS is not completely subscription based for in all markets where it's offered. In some cases, it's only certain aspects of the service is offered as a service model. Richard, could you define for us what NAS really represents, what it is and what it's not for companies?
Okay, so I think basically the NAS to me, it has two folds. Okay, one is people think of as a service, then it's a consuming basis model. So you don't need put in capex, you don't need a long time to set it up. When you need a service, okay, it's there. You swipe your credit card and you choose your bandwidth and the connection is made. So this is the first level of a network as a service. Okay. So Leo just mentioned a very good point. For the enterprise, they are facing a lot of as a service, but they have to put these puzzles together. That's the big challenge. Okay. So the second level of as a service is we have a strong DevOps team. We really understand, we work hand in hand with the enterprise like Leo's company. So if we understand what they need and we package everything together with the network and as a service to the customer. Okay, so I give you an example. It's for example, Leo mentioned video conferencing. Okay, so this morning, it took me and my team like 20 minutes to set up, everything, figure out and join the webinar. I knew a company in China, which is my friend's company, doing video conferencing. So we said video conferencing before. Okay, so what they do is really video conferencing as a service. What they did during COVID, okay, in China, they organized like 3,000 different government agencies to join a single video conferencing. So what they need those agencies to do, they just turn on their computer and a video. That's all the customer needs to do. And they centralized control the 3,000 endpoints video conferencing. So this is a as a service model. So we hope with our different technologies and with our DevOps teams to understand what customer really want, we can put together a network as a service. So the customer really only need to focus on their key business and tell us what they want, how much reliability, how much latency they want, and to where. That's all they need to tell me. And we put everything together. We operate for them. That's a true network as a service.
Okay. Are there any limitations you can think of in the existing NAS definition or model? Does it apply to any organization? Are there certain challenges?
Yeah, I mean, this is our goal. I mean, it's the no boundary. So we go as far as the customer wants us to go. Okay. And that's why we're working with Kira. So we are doing the traditional network fabrics, and they are doing the cloud-to-cloud connects. And so we put them together. There's a complete suite of a network service. So one company cannot do it at all. So there are technology vendors, there are different expertise. And for CBC, we want to combine everything together. We package, we as a service provider to our enterprise customers.
Right. So I mean, following on from what Richard just mentioned, how do you see the NAS model really playing out among existing customers now? Because in a very real sense, we are talking about moving the controls of what is traditionally in-house, to a service provider to run. Right? We had the same discussion over the years with when companies looked at SaaS, right, and giving up some level of control and increasingly leaving it to the cloud providers to manage it for them, or the software service providers to manage it. Is this a concern in an industry or in the IT landscape when networking technology hasn't really evolved, until the advent of SDN. Hasn't really evolved very much. We have a lot of legacy infrastructure. It's been like 30 years of very little innovation on the hardware side. So when you look at NAS, what is that? If you were speaking to an enterprise customer, how would you pitch this? I mean, is the control a big issue? Is the cost benefit far outweighing whatever legacy infrastructure they are holding on to? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the most important area that we need to address first is obviously the multiple clouds, right? The adoption and how we accelerate that adoption for the end customer. And so what we have done at Alkira is to build a common infrastructure across all these clouds, and so that we can seamlessly marry that to what Richard was alluding to, is the SD-WAN environments or other environments that exist. So on the cloud side, what you're seeing is that things are evolving from the perspective that a solution needs to be standard across all these environments, and it needs to adapt to the needs of the customer, and it needs to be completely as a service. Right now, if you go to AWS, you do things completely differently. You go to Ali Cloud or Tencent, you do things completely differently. There's no standardization of the networking constructs, and the limitations and capabilities are completely different. So we have built the infrastructure which spans across all these cloud environments, which seamlessly interconnects into your SD-WAN environments and also your data centers and remote users at the same time, and also allows you to deploy the higher layer services on demand in an elastic manner. So as requirements for firewalls grow, it expands, and it shrinks when your requirements go away. So essentially what that boils down to is that there's no software or hardware to ship. You can consume networking for the first time in the networking history, industry's history, completely as a service in the cloud model, where you pay for whatever you use and you stop paying as soon as you stop using it. So that's a major shift in the networking industry, and we hope to transform the whole networking industry over time in that direction.
Right, excellent. And coming back to you, Leo, what does this sound like to you? I mean, as a customer, NAS offers obviously some curious benefits. Is that something you might be looking at? Is this something appealing to enterprise customers, you think?
Yeah, short answer, yes. So when I worked at Cisco about almost 15 years ago, the CEO at the time, John Chambers, already foresee the advancement to everything as a service. I think we're kind of halfway through right now, and this is really just a matter of time. And coming back from the enterprise perspective, I think with the advent of 5G, IoT, AI, which is already here, there's an imminent urgency for enterprise to advance from IT to DT, right? What I meant by that is, we are starting from information technology, right? Computerization, right? To now digital era, right? So the analogy I make is that we go from Stone Age to knife and to guns, and now we are going to tomahawk, right? Smart missiles. And it's a very different world, right? That we're entering into. Very exciting time, but I think because it's new, right? So I think more trial and error will be required to advance to the so-called never before.
Okay. Thanks for that. I think, we have a question. I think maybe this might be an opportunity to just address it. This is for Richard. The question is, you gave the example of a video conferencing as a service company, which is a very simple service. In an organization, things are more complex. For example, application hosting in the cloud, on-premise and firewall rules, backup and requirements. How do you address those concerns? Richard?
So that's why. So what we try to be is to be a integrator of all different services. So we're building security into our SD-WAN. We're building video conferencing service into our SD-WAN. and we're building like multi-cloud connect into our SD-WAN. So we are packaging all these features, and at the same time, we are extend our peering with all major ISPs in the world. We are building our extensive layer 2 infrastructures with this big network fabrics and the applications together. We package that. So, and
right.
after all, we want to listen to our customers, what their pinpoint, what they really need. So our DevOps teams can develop a solution, a comprehensive solution as a service. So this is our approach.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. I just wanted to, address the issue also of security, because, particularly since we talked about video conferencing as an example, this year we've seen issues with encryption and malware and other issues as companies accelerated into the cloud because of COVID-19. In the context of deploying SD-WAN, there's been a lot of talk about a zero trust network, right? And how does this really impact network security in the enterprise? And in particular, since since SD-WAN was introduced into the market, there's been a consistent message about security, whether it's the underlay or overlay, the granular visibility of the traffic going in and out, and therefore assuring customers that the connections are secure. But having said that, there is a sense now that security is still, an area where companies are, I guess, still nervous about. So the zero trust network is a model that I think is relatively new in the sense of, the cloud and what we are doing with SD-WAN. Richard, there's been some talk here about, I believe it's called SASE as well. What are your thoughts about security on the SD-WAN and this whole thing around zero trust network? What are enterprises? What can they expect?
I think the whole concept came up because the networking environment we're in today is far more complex than before. Okay, especially we have all these mobile users, we have all these smart devices, and also IoTs. Okay, so they are everywhere. They are at home, in the office, and in the cloud. And like before, the enterprise only worry about their boundaries. Okay, they build a strong firewall, antivirus to protect their office, to protect their key data centers, and with encrypted VPN to connect each other. Okay, they're fine. But now with all these multiple devices and all kind of networking scenarios, so you never know where the loophole is. Okay, it can go through the 5G through a mobile phone and to compromise the whole security system. That's how the zero trust network came in. Okay, and I think it will work nicely with SD-WAN because the technology we're currently developing is we're building zero trust at a network level, at a network layer, combined with our SD-WAN device.
Right.
So what it does is every request, so we will issue for those users, the legitimate users, a certificate. Okay, so every time when a user initiates any request, no matter it's within the organization, within the firewall, or somewhere in the cloud, or he's at home on the road, through every network. So they have to use their current IP address and plus the certificate and to do the authentication. Then they will be able to obtain the IP address of the destination. Otherwise, they don't even see the IP address of the destinations. So it's hidden to hackers. So this is some sort of zero trust model we're simply building at network layer. I know a lot of vendors, they are developing different technologies to enable the zero trust network, But I think this is essential for the future, given the complex network environment.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, your thoughts on that as far as security is concerned, especially in a multi-cloud reality.
So certainly, I mean, what we are trying to do to help out the customers, in addition to what Richard said, is to create completely secure and on-demand environments where customers could bring in the firewalls and other security capabilities on demand. So let's say you have an SD-WAN environment, you should be able to seamlessly tie it into the cloud so that your network functions can reside in the cloud, because cloud is the new edge, right? So you bring in the traffic over SD-WAN into these regional locations, and because you have to identify who is coming in, make sure that you have strong security in who you allow inside, whether it's a remote user or a mobile user, or whether it's your branches or data centers or the cloud environments. So your security vulnerabilities are at there are multiple attack vectors now, right? So we have to secure them at different locations. And what we have noticed is that it's just like when you have roads and railroads, you have many points of attack. But if you don't allow anybody to get off, and they're only coming in through the airplanes to the hubs into your environment, then you have centralized locations where you can have very strict security measures, right? So what we are doing is creating these virtualized environments where you can centrally distribute security, right? So it's regionally distributed security. And that's where, we are working with CBC also to partner with them to make sure that the overall integration of these existing environments like SD-WAN and the cloud environments, they come together to offer a very strong solution to the industry.
So it doesn't matter really, I mean, if you're consuming the public clouds, working with AWS or Azure, you can centrally manage that security.
Yes, and that's the beauty of the solutions, like what we are bringing to the table, is that on demand, you can spin up security, and you also have very strong intent-based policy controls, which can steer the traffic. Let's say you are under attack. You can, with a click of a button, decide that I need to take this traffic through a different security point now, right? So it's very powerful mechanisms coming, because the way we do networking is moving from, the hardware-based, to software-based solutions, both in and outside of the cloud.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And Leo, just to wrap up the point, from an enterprise perspective, security is always such a big issue. It's the elephant in the room all the time. And as we move to the cloud over the last couple of years and integrated SD-WAN into the networks and stuff, I'm sure there has been a lot of debate internally about how do we put this all together with existing security services, right? So how have you worked around this issue with SD-WAN security from an enterprise customer perspective, while looking at the overall security infrastructure for your organization?
Yeah, I think the short answer is that no matter how much you secure, right, that there's always risk that somebody might somehow, right, get in, right, and how we mitigate risk, right, by isolations, right. I think that's the whole point about zero trust, rather than just a simple firewall, right, and also kind of two trust, right. You put another firewall around it, right. It's just never enough, right. I think the isolation at the network level, right, if the hacker cannot get to the servers directly, then we kind of minimize the risk, but still the risk is still there. So I think it's very important that enterprise, we have a monitoring, right, in place. So we get alerts of any abnormal, right, data or behaviors, that potential threats in the network. And at the last, right, is to the ability to quickly respond, right. It will always happen. It's just a matter of time. But once it happens, that how fast can we respond, right, and block off, right, the threat. I think those are the areas, I think, for enterprise are really care about.
Okay, okay. And with that, I want to thank all of you. I think we've just about run out of time for our panel discussion. I think it was very, very fruitful discussion. There's a sense now of, at least from my perspective, some optimism about moving forward into the cloud with a lot of the different issues being addressed. Again, I want to thank Richard, Amir, and Leo for a very frank and very open discussion. Thank you, gentlemen.